This is the only book that I have felt truly compelled to do a full review of. And truthfully, I think the reason why is just that I need to talk about this book for like an hour and get it out of my system because I can't stop thinking about it. I don't really want to move on to the next book because I kind of just want to like fully process this. And if you're curious, my basic review is very, very positive. So in this video, I want to do three things. I want to give you my general overview impressions that are non-spoilery, go into the positive things, the things that I just absolutely loved about this book. But what I also want to do is talk about the reason this is not a five-star book for me and basically talk about the critique I have of it, which is a structural critique. It's always something structural. And I think that this actually matters. What's wrong about the structure, it cheapens the overall plot a little bit. But that being said, it doesn't cheapen the emotional impact of the book. So yeah, this is like my favorite book that I've read in like 10 years. I really very much connected with this book. If you have thoughts and opinions on this book, please leave a comment down below. Even if they're different from mine, literally would just love to discuss this with any and everyone who's read this book. I also know that I'm very late to the party and I have not read on, so everything that I'm thinking is just based on the first two books. So bear with me. And here's what I'd say about spoilers. You want to go into this knowing as little as possible. So I'm the kind of person who will watch a whole spoiler review of a book I want to read and just keep watching it because I just want to know more about it without actually reading the book. This is not a book that you want to do that with. You want to click away from this video, go read this book, and then come back and hear the thoughts on it. Okay, overall impressions. As I was reading this book and having the time of my life, I was simultaneously having such genuine sadness for the future me right now, who is finished this book and will never again read it for the first time. Like, it is that kind of book where I could not fully enjoy it because I was so upset knowing that it would be over. If this was twice the length, I would happily read all 1,200 pages. I don't think I've actually savored a book in a long time where I would basically be listening to the audiobook and reading at the same time so that I caught every word. And I would go back and reread sections if I maybe missed something or just enjoyed it a lot. Like, I took my sweet time with this book and it only took me 4 days. I honestly just couldn't stop thinking about it. This book does the best job of any book I've ever read of reaching out and grabbing your emotions and not letting go of them. I'll talk about this in the section of what I really loved, but basically the themes of love lost, mental health, traumatic experiences, just so many different things that were incredibly meaningful. Like, this was not fluff. Like, it was insanely fun. It was like candy, but it wasn't fluff. And I think there's a huge difference there. And so many of the fantasy romance books I've been reading this year are fluff. This book was not. It had some adult content, so be aware of that and, read at your own discretion. But it didn't have it for the majority of the book, and I really appreciated that so that you can really just enjoy like the buildup of romantic tension for most of the book. It didn't jump right into things, and so it's an insanely slow burn. And I think that was really to the book's credit. So those are my overall thoughts. I feel like I really can't say anything more without more specifics. So now I'm going to get into the things that I just absolutely adored about this book and that just completely enchanted me and hooked me. So let's get into that. Obviously, we'll get to the critique part, but there's just a couple things I have to talk about that are just too good. Okay, the very first thing, and probably the thing that impressed me the most right off the bat, is the adult themes. I'm not talking about adult content here, I'm talking about adult themes. I'm talking about the aspects of life that are difficult and deeply sad. Grief over things that you've lost that you once used to love, especially the beginning quarter where she is getting into the spoilers now. Final warning, where, she's at the spring court with Tamlin and she is greatly suffering from her traumatic experiences under the mountain, and he is not helping. And he's going through his own healing process, but not really. And he's just like really not doing great and is not able to help her in the way that she needs. And so she lets him help himself by not demanding anything and not actually getting the help that she needs for herself because she loves him and she wants him to be okay and sacrifices herself for it. That entire part of the book made me realize truly the difference between adult and YA. And I really feel like this book very solidly lands in the adult, even though it's fun and it's like a fantasy fairy adventure. It was just really well done. Okay, the slow burn romance with Rhysand, unparalleled. Just unparalleled. I've never read anything like it. What made this so effective for me specifically, maybe other people love to jump into spicy things. I just seriously the slow burn with like the cat and mouse games, the flirting, building a friendship on like shared experience, and just both of them healing slowly. It was just perfect. It was the perfect thing for what she had gone through, what he had gone through. I don't even think I can encapsulate the journey of that. That's the main part of the book. That's the part that glowed. I'm not going to say a whole lot more because I just feel like words are probably going to fail it. If you read this book, you understand what was so important about it, and that was just beautifully, beautifully done in a way I've literally never seen. And then we have more of like the vibes, which are the Court of Dreams, the Night Court, like Valeris? I don't know how to say that, but however you like. The city of starlight combined with the cold fury that Rhysand is supposed to have. And then you realize that it's a cover for the city and the people that he loves, and being a dreamer and dreaming of a better world, and, the night sky star metaphor. It just was the most beautiful, dreamy atmosphere. And the atmosphere was bound up in the person himself, in the cast of characters that were introduced in this book, and in the setting. It was kind of like a YA style prose, which I think maybe ages it down a little bit so it's very accessible. But just the beauty in it was just something that was capturing from page to page. The finale, so good. So good. You kind of think that things are over, and then all of a sudden it hits you again, and then twist after twist happens, but just not quite in the same way as the first one. I think the first one was a little bit more successful with that, and I think part of what made this less successful was a little bit of confusion about why exactly all of this happened. I think there were a few logical questions I had about the finale that cheapened it just a bit. Basically, Tamlin's motivations for this, like, I understand he wants to get his girl back, but he's going to basically damn his entire country and all of the humans that he has made this stand of like trying to protect them and do better than his father did. I don't know that I buy that. Like, she's one girl. You're gonna like basically betray humankind and fae kind for this girl. Like, what assurances did you get that this guy was gonna like be merciful? Like, I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe I missed something. Just a little bit of confusion about why they didn't have a better contingency plan for if they did get caught. Barring all that, it was a fantastic finale, very exciting. And of course, the Fae were doing her whole plan at the end where she sacrifices herself. Oh my gosh, it's just too good. Too good, too good. I like literally read that all on audiobook, then I went back and read the whole thing in the actual book just to like absorb it again. Payoff is so important, and it just the last 40 pages just hit the nail on the head. Just incredible. So many things to love, so many things to gush over, to think back on, to process. Just a beautiful, beautiful story. Let's move into the structural critique. I almost don't want to critique this book because I like it so much, but I have to. I think it's my duty. We have to go back to Brandon Sanderson for this. It's always Brandon, and it always will be. So we have the 3 P's of plot. Plot involves 3 things: a promise, which is a setup of a plot line, progress along that plot line, and then payoff for that promise based on the progress you've made. So we have to ask ourselves what promises are made, what progress is made on those promises based on the plot events, and what payoff does that get us to. So this book sets itself up like a fantasy story that has a political external plot and a love story subplot. But I think what happens is that the romance is actually the main plot, and the political external plot is thrown on as a scaffold for the romance. Now, basically, the effect that this creates is a flimsy political conflict because you know that it's for the sake of building a complex romance. And it does a fantastic job of building this complex romance, but it itself is flimsy. And so then basically that cheapens the sense making of the world and of the conflict that they're in, and it cheapens the stakes. And I'll show you how this works. So I've drawn up a little sketch. Don't get intimidated by this. It's going to be okay. So basically, in the blue is the romance plot. In the pink is the political plot. It's just which line it's falling on is which goal it's progressing. So the setup is that she's with Tamlin, but she's suffering, and she gets to a point of realizing she can't stay. And so Rhysand's offer is the inciting incident of, you can stay here, and you can also help me with this political goal. It's like, oh, the romance will be a consequence of following the main political plot. So then Fun and Games is truly, truly both. So there's a lot of progress being made in the romance plot, but what's actually the structure, like the events of the Fun and Games, is the political plot, is them doing things that are furthering their political goal of saving the world, finding the halves of the book, talking with her sisters, talking with the queens. So the events of the fun and games are political. So up until this point, I am thoroughly convinced by this chart that the entire external plot is actually the political plot and the romance is a beautiful, lovely subplot. But after the midpoint, that changes because of the bad guys close in, and this is where everything goes wonky. So, bad guys close in is purely romantic. If the political plot was truly the external plot, what would happen after the midpoint is the midpoint would change something about the external plot. It would raise the stakes, it would increase tension, it would show the bad guy's face, it would show the bad guys moving in, it would show their plan forming, it would show that the danger is high. Okay? That's not what happens. They get some ruby eggs from the High Lord of Summer that's like, hey, you did us dirty. And then there's no further threat. After the midpoint, there is very little progress made in the political goal, and all the progress is made in the relationship goal because the midpoint also sets off this jealousy arc of them kind of realizing they have feelings for each other. That means that this entire third quarter of the book, when it's supposed to be ramping up the tension to the external finale, is actually just them getting together. So an event happens here that I think is incredibly symbolic of this, which is my main gripe with the entire book, is that at 77% of the way through the book, I was listening to my audiobook and I was thinking, I think probably what should happen is that the bad guys should move in and something really bad should happen. Some conflict should start happening so that we can actually build up to the finale. A couple minutes later, something happened where Reese was shot down out of the sky by ash arrows by Hybern soldiers. And you think, oh, this is great. This is the political plot ramping up. Maybe the political plot still is the external plot. But no, he's taken to a cave and he is whipped, question mark. He is not taken captive. He is not killed. Nothing happens to him. He's barely guarded. Feyre gets in there, completely resolves the situation in like 2 pages. Like, this girl does not have to struggle to do this. She goes and finds the Suriel. The entire point of this conflict that is supposed to look like it's furthering the political conflict, but the point of it is actually just for her to get the information that they are mates. So basically, what I'm saying is this is the definition of the word contrived. This conflict beat was contrived to further the romance. So it has absolutely no bearing on the actual conflict. And also, if you take a look at the villain's motivations for doing this, why would Hybern do this? Why would they take Reese into a cave, tie him up with special magic canceling chains, and then whip him? Do you not want to like take him to the king, take him off island? Basically, there's no plan, there's no motivation. So if the single political plot event we have that adds conflict and tension for the political plot makes no progress towards the political external plot or goal, then it's actually furthering the romance completely. And then the all is lost moment happens. Basically, chapters 52, 53, pity partying in the cabin. What is lost is her connection to Reese because she's pissy. What is lost is not anything to do with the political conflict. They have not taken a hit with Hybern, like in any way. And so then what you can guess is the aha moment is their relationship solidifying, is her choosing to accept the mating bond, and then everything that happens in chapter 55. But if the aha moment is choosing to accept the relationship and the all is lost moment is the fear of losing that relationship, then I'm pretty sure this actually is solid evidence that the romance plot is the external plot. The events surrounding it are all romantic events. So basically, we have to look at cause and effect. The things that push it into it is a romantic event, finding out that they're mates and that he lied to her. And then the thing that it changes, the thing that it influences when she has her aha moment, is the relationship and not the political plot. Okay, the next beats we have are basically the finale and the resolution. The finale has like 2 different beats. I don't really understand what's going on there with the King of Hybern like attacking the city without enough forces to do anything. It's just like a tease. It's just like, hey, I know where you are and I can kill your people if I wanted to, but I'm actually going to get decimated within the first 5 minutes of conflict. And I guess that was a setup so that they would go and like try to steal the cauldron or something. I honestly don't understand. That part doesn't make any sense to me. There's an attack on the city, which then spurs our heroes to make a plan. And then they get into the real conflict, which is at the cauldron where Tamlin and Lucian come into things. But basically what I'm trying to say here is that this whole sequence of finale beats, this is all back to the external political plot. However, there has not been any progress made on that since the midpoint, but the midpoint had no effect on the plot. So the midpoint was like an event to push forward the relationship. And for the entire third quarter of the book, there is no political plot progress. Barring the queens giving them the second half of the book, yes, but that comes after the aha moment, and that's kind of part of the finale. Okay, so what this comes down to is that it's very, very clear to me that the political events are there to push forward the romance, and it's not even subtle. Hitting us with this huge, big political event at the end as the finale is like trying to cover up for the fact that progress has not been made in the political plot since a long time ago. And then it's like we can make up for it now with a huge cascade of twists and turns. Regardless of the fact that the finale was not set up properly, it was fantastic. But I think if she had worked on the external political conflict in the second half of the book and actually given us conflict events from Highburn so that we could see progress on it rather than it just being dropped for the romance to take center stage, then the entire political issue might not seem so contrived. And it might not seem like it is actually just there to prop up this romance, which it is, right? That's its purpose. But it's like, I want to feel like we're here to save the world and it matters. And doing this just makes it feel like the stakes aren't actually that high because I can see everything you're doing and it's just to get these two characters together. It could have been done better, but also nobody's kidding themselves. This is a romance book. Nevertheless, best romance I have ever read, and the book still stands up as like one of the most beautiful things I have ever consumed. If you don't agree with me, if you have thoughts on this you would like to share, if you commiserate, whatever it is, I literally would love to hear it. I would just ask that you be respectful because there are a lot of feelings around this book because it honestly is so important to so many people, and I get it now. I do. But if you come up with a great counter argument for any of these, I have to hear it. Please tell me. Give this video a like if you enjoyed the content, and also subscribe to my channel to see more book analysis and also writing craft tips and tricks. I also have a Fiverr linked below for developmental critiques and book coaching, so check that out if you're interested. Thank you for watching this lengthy and passionate discussion of A Court of Mist and Fury. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.